Hello, friends, and welcome back to this week's episode of Brainstorming America. I'm John Merrill, and we are excited to have my colleague and friend, Ken Rollins, joining us once again today. Ken, welcome back.
Good to see you, brother.
Thank you, my friend.
And it's good to be brainstorming. Boy, we can take something and peel it apart like a pecan and get the goodie out there, as they say, where they can hear it. The first item I want to bring up is something that's in the news. It's an incident happening up in Palestine, Ohio, but it's something that could happen to Birmingham, Alabama, Heflin, Alabama, Montgomery, any other place. And how you handle these things is important because at Anderson Depot, I had a hazmat team, and one of our jobs was to be ready to handle things like that. We had some smaller, these on a smaller scale, but we had Hurricane Opal hit us one time, and it turned a lot of our chemical vats upside down. It was cyanide and all kind of other chemicals, and our job was to keep them out of the creek, which goes into our drinking water here. And so there is ways to handle, but what they did up there from a layperson, or a semi-layperson, I was really embarrassed for our people, our first responders, that could have got in there. They could have brought whoever was in charge, maybe the mayor or the governor, somebody could have ordered a tanker from the Forestry Service to dump the chemicals on those 2 tankers, put them out, and then the fire department could have wet down the others, and they could have pumped them out safely, transported those chemicals away, and then removed the cars. And but the problem is that what went in the air is going to be harming. It's like the Camp Lejeune. It's
For
going
years
to be
to
years
come.
Years to come.
No doubt.
Yeah, because
same thing that we've seen at Monsanto here locally, that people got millions of dollars for because of what actually happened at the plant at that particular time.
Yeah.
But you know, the situation that you're talking about, Ken, that's so difficult is understanding that in many emergency response situations, we have too many people that just respond to the emergency, but not through an area of preparedness.
Right.
We should never let an emergency situation arise where our law enforcement professionals, emergency response professionals, our medical professionals are ill-prepared, ill-trained, ill-advised, and ill-funded and ill-equipped to appropriately respond to whatever emergency is introduced to them. Yeah. And if that happens because of lack of training, then that's on all of us. We need to be demanding that, especially from those individuals that I just identified.
When you've got something that's a potential hazard, you be prepared for it. Like our friend Bill Partridge, he's prepared over the years for I-20. The things that you passed on your way to the show today, could blow up a whole bunch of stuff. If we look at if you learn how to read placards, and you look at the placard and you get one of those and it says 673, you don't know, but if you go to the book, the DOT handbook, and see what's, and you go, oh my gosh, I was that close to that truck. You know, that's what's out there.
Sure.
And but if you're not prepared for it, and some people, the leadership of our communities, is that we depend on them to do that.
Well, there's no doubt about it, and we have to prepare on them to do it. But if we don't make sure that those people are adequately trained and adequately funded for the training, then it's on us. Once again, we've got to make sure that we're prepared for whatever emergency situation needs to be in our minds, because we don't ever know what might occur. And so having collaborative spirit, collaborative efforts, and obviously a cooperative arrangement between local law enforcement, emergency responders, and medical responders is preeminent in everything that we do each and every day.
I'm the one that's supposed to stay on the top of the news to bring us the items to talk about, but I bet I got one that you may not have seen yesterday. Yesterday, California introduced a canine law. Canines are considered to be racist, canine dogs, because they go back to the day they had them out there making speeches. They're introducing legislation that dogs are considered to be racist, just canine dogs. One's a police dog, or we refer to them police dogs. So there's been situations where the dogs have given their lives for law enforcement.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that's a good trade-off, but that has happened a lot. But to go that far, and it was on several news shows last night, that they're actually going forward with this legislation to ban canines as being racist, to not be able to use them in law enforcement.
Well, I'll say this, Ken. I mean, this is my thought about that particular situation. If there's an individual who feels that a dog is racist and a dog is not the type tool to use in a technical evaluation of criminal activity that may occur, then we need to take that human that is opposed to the use of that canine, and we need to train that human to do that work and put that particular human in that environment and ask that human to evaluate the situation and then report back to the law enforcement officers what needs to be done. I don't think that human is going to be as excited about doing that as the canine that's been trained for that purpose.
Did you see the thing that they had, Trump was charged with that? Well, the grand jury was out on that thing over Georgia. You see that grand juror?
I did. That was embarrassing.
Very embarrassing.
Yes, sir.
And it just throws everything out the door. I want to talk more about that, but they tell us in here we got. Camera 3, that's you.
And we'll see you right back here in just a minute.
Okay.
Welcome back to this segment of Brainstorming America this week. There's a number of things that have been going on recently throughout the news. And Ken, what's the next topic on the agenda?
I got a question for you. Is there a possibility that you would come back to public service one day?
You know, that's a great question. I have people that ask me that from time to time as I continue to move around the state. And, you know, one of the things that I have been known for throughout Alabama is traveling to all 67 counties. This is the 11th year in a row that I will have done so. As of the taping of this particular program, I've already been to 21 of the 67 counties since January the 1st of this year for 90-plus visits to those 21 counties. And when you continue to be out about and have the kind of movement that we show, people are naturally inclined to think, well, he can't just be doing that because he's working. But that's exactly what I'm doing. But a longer answer to your question is, if there is a position out there where people think I can be helpful, where people think I can be impactful, where people believe that I'm the best candidate for the particular position that's in question, it's certainly something that I would consider. You're kind to mention it. We've had what many people consider a distinguished career in public service to this point. 4 years in the Alabama legislature, represent the southern and eastern part of Tuscaloosa County, and then 8 years as the 53rd Secretary of State. So it's not something that I'm prepared to respond to in the affirmative today, but I would tell you that it is something that I would definitely consider in the future if it was the right opportunity at the right time for the right office.
Well, Saturday I was over in Birmingham and I was at a Vietnam Veterans America meeting, and I was sitting beside Wayne Reynolds, that's on the Board of Education. You know Wayne.
I know Dr. Reynolds well.
And your name, when we had some time, we talked about it a lot. And one of the things that, away from what you've done here in Alabama, is we know that you served at a national position, which a lot of people never get to do that. Even state senators are limited to certain things. You had the whole United States. You dealt with people from you dealt with crazy people in Washington State, Oregon, all kinds of.
I can tell you the names.
Yeah. And they've all different personalities. These people.
That's right.
And some of them you were dealing with Democrats as well as Republicans.
That's right.
But that in itself brings something that's further than Alabama. So I'm not saying the president, I'm saying that there's something out there
Yes, sir.
that's calling for you.
Yes, sir.
and I hope that you'll take it, and you still come down here from Washington D.C. and do Brainstorming America.
Every time we get ready to film. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm serious about that because behind your back, a lot of people feel like that you should be out there serving the people because you've done great. Well, see, people don't realize we've had a bad name in their elections over the years and our voting, and you've put it right back in their face that they've had. I'll never forget. I always bring up Hillary Clinton and you.
Right.
That you put it back in their face.
Right.
That not only do we do the right thing, but we excel in going above and beyond.
That's right, and did so respectfully, Ken.
Yeah.
In talking to Secretary Clinton, as you mentioned, in February of 2016, I had an opportunity to visit with her privately, and of course, she's one of those liberal politicians that has often talked about Alabama in a negative light and talked about how Alabama needs to overcome its past. And one of the things that I shared with her is, look, prior to November the 2nd, 2010, I was not in a position to do anything about what occurred in the 30s, in the 40s, in the 50s, and the 60s, when I wasn't even born. But from November the 2nd, 2010 until January the 15th, 2023, I was in a position to do something, and I did so by helping to break every record in the history of the state for voter registration, in helping to break every record in the history of the state for voter participation, ensuring that we had 96% of our eligible African Americans registered to vote, 91% of our eligible white Alabamians registered to vote, and 94% of all eligible Alabamians registered to vote, and making sure that we were giving attention to the things that needed to be given attention to whenever it was reported that somebody was breaking the law concerning elections, whether it was improprieties, irregularities, or inconsistencies. We wanted to make sure those were properly investigated, and we investigated all of them. Actually, 1,807 different instances of voter fraud that were reported when I was the secretary, resulting in 7 convictions, resulting in 2 elections being overturned and 1 official being removed for malfeasance. Whenever we're doing that, we're recognized by national groups as being the premier leader in election integrity, security, and transparency, by the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, by the Conservative Women for Good Government in Washington, D.C., and by the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. So it's one thing to say that you're the best. It's another thing to have these other people validate it for you, to talk about the successes that you've experienced, and to talk about the accomplishments that you produced during your service in public life. And I appreciate you saying that, but the real winner in our state are the people of Alabama who have given us the authority and the ability to make those changes.
Yeah. When I go in to vote and I go through all the processes, I don't even like to reach back there and get my wallet, but I have to do that. And for that little bit, I think, that's suppressing the vote just by making me show an ID. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, but I know you've put that to bed here, and we've had great elections. I always felt like my vote counted when I went in through there. So
yes, sir.
I think we got to go to break. So that's
Yes, sir.
that's calling you there, ain't it?
Yes, sir. And we'll be right back for our final segment of Brainstorming America. Welcome back to the final segment of this week's episode of Brainstorming America. We're delighted that you've joined us again this week, and we're excited to round out this week's episode with some thoughts about what's about to happen in Montgomery, Alabama.
And speaking of that, John, the legislature's about to go in and do all those fantastic things they do every year. And I want you to weigh in on that because you used to serve in the legislature and you just left as a Secretary of State. What are your thoughts they need to be looking at?
Well, Ken, I think it's important for people to remember the Alabama legislature has one charge according to the code and the Constitution of Alabama, and that's to pass the budgets. So our state can be operational, and so things can be properly, adequately funded from education, law enforcement, public safety, roads and bridges, all the things that are necessary in order for us to go about our way each and every day. I think it's lost on a number of the people that serve in the House and a number of people that serve in the Senate that Montgomery didn't start the day that they walked into 11 South Union. I think it's important to remember that they're there for one reason, and that's to make our lives easier, to help us accomplish what we want to accomplish, and to do so without any interference from them. And whenever a member of the legislative body goes into their service with that as the premier thought in their minds, it's better for all of us, because it puts us in a stronger position to be able to encourage them to do what they need to do so that they will not get off track and start talking about things that are really inconsequential in the lives of everyday Alabamians.
You know, I've been serving on the State Board of Veterans Affairs for about 19 years now, and the funds, you serving in the legislature, you know that the funds are in each group of people have their own fund. Like the Transportation Department has X number of dollars. The Department of Veterans Affairs has X number of dollars. Well, we're funded, our Veterans Assistance Fund comes from a $500,000 tax of the widows, Civil War widows fund.
Right.
And that comes from the property tax. We get this forever. And one time they were trying to build 4 prisons because we're on still got a thing against us. If we don't get our prisons in shape, the Federals are going to come take them over.
Sure they will.
And so they were trying to figure out where they're going to get the money, $50 million or whatever, to build a 4, maybe more than that, maybe in the billions, to build 4 prisons. So when they look down the scale, they see, oh, them veterans over there has got a lot of money. Well, that money is dedicated somewhere. You can't touch it. So when we built that veterans home in Pell City, for example, that was a $50 million output from us. And I say us from what we had there saving, and put that with the federal VA, I think 7 or 8 million. And we built that $60 million veterans home there in Pell City. Now we're building another one that's 70-something million. Identical place, $10 million more because of the increase and everything.
Yes, sir.
But the legislatures are steady looking to ways to grab your money. So we have to be creative in our departments to make sure that money is put somewhere that it can't be touched.
Well, Ken, you know there's an old moniker that says that no Alabamian's life, liberty, or property is safe whenever the Alabama legislature is in session.
Yeah, that's right. But it is a shame when you got to do that. We got money. We managed our money properly, and we paid our bills, and we got some we put aside for emergencies. I remember one time we had a roof go bad, and it's nearly $1 million roof, but the people that built it put it on to start with. The warranty was there, but they were out of business. So we had to put a roof on. We had buckets catching water in a nursing home, so you can't do that. So we had to come up with a couple $1 million there, and we can't just run out of money and not have something for that rainy days situation.
Absolutely.
When you're taking care of veterans' health, that's what I was getting at.
We have to serve and protect those that have done so much to protect us and our way of life, Ken.
Absolutely.
And that's why I've long admired your commitment to veterans. I mean, obviously you are a veteran, but when you think about all the things that you've done to bring recognition and to bring more honor to those who have dedicated their lives and given their lives for that purpose, it means more to me than I can express to you, brother.
Well, I appreciate that. And I wanted to always ask you a question about it. Where does every event we've been to, whether it's for law enforcement or military veterans, you have been there. You've always been the speaker or been there giving your support. Where did that come from?
Well, For me, in
Yeah.
my family, the commitment that you're talking about to law enforcement and to our armed services came from my family's heritage and the service that was given by my family, my grandfather, my uncles, my parents, who made a commitment. As you know, my Uncle Stanley was the chief of Oxford's police department for 30 plus years. My grandfather served in World War II. I know you remember hearing the story about when he gave me his spoon from World War II that I had for all the time from when he gave it to me, and how much that meant to me because of how it equated to his service and his commitment to come back to be with his family. But I think that type of love and patriotism that our family has been able to show for law enforcement and for our armed services is something that should be instilled in each and every family in Alabama, each and every family in the United States of America, because if it was not for that commitment and dedication, we would not be able to enjoy the freedoms and the liberties that we have today.
I've had been at ceremonies where you were, and behind your back, someone will say, "Oh, was he in the service or something?" They'd always have that question because you've always been supportive of the military, and I think you and I, we look at military and law enforcement as one of the same.
Yes, sir.
Because you put on that uniform, it don't matter if you're protecting them back home or in Iraq or whatever. So they're talking about going to number 3, I think.
Yes, sir. No doubt.
That's you.
Yes, sir. Well,
Two.
we're going to go out on 2, and we're excited that you joined us again this week for Brainstorming America. We'll hope you'll be back again with us next week. Until then, have a great evening.